Jared Polin, Photo.com, and in this video I want to break down a recent photo shoot that I did. I want to go through the images and cull it down to the best of the best with honors, sir. Now I've already edited it down to the keepers that I want, but I can go even further when I'm trying to make the best photo story. And what I always look for, and I harp on and I tell everybody, are 4 things when I'm shooting. I want wides, mediums, tights, and details. Those 4 things help build the best photo story. So what I'm going to do in this video is edit down the images even further, go through the settings, talk about what I like, talk about what I could have done better, so that maybe when you're out in a similar situation, you might be able to remember this video and go, okay, I could make this change or that change. So to set up the entire situation, I was using the Canon EOS R3 because it just came out, and I took it out to shoot with 3 different lenses. I took the 28-70 f2, the 85-1.2, and the 70-200 2.8. I did not take anything wider because they really don't, they have a 15-35, which would have been good, but I was there just to try and tell the best story I can for Robert Costa here, who's a friend of mine. And so right off the bat, we've got the 28-70 f2, we've got a 28mm lens. We're at 1/250th of a second at f2.0 800 ISO. That is not an extravagant setting, right? Settings. I'm not pushing them extremely far, and I want you to see that even though I have an R3, I don't have to press it super far. And honestly, I took what, 283 pictures during this shoot, and I edited down to the best 36, and I could take it even further to break it down. But let's look at this image, right? Would I like to go wider? If I had wider, I probably would have gone a little wide, but this still establishes the scene. I'm always looking to establish a scene. I found it interesting that he's sitting at this little fold-up table. We've got the manager of the store who has a ton of books for him to sign, and Robert's just, before he speaks, is going and signing each one of these copies, so when someone purchases it, they have a signed copy that night, or they could buy one and then he would sign it in person later. But I just liked the framing and composition here. But in terms of settings, if you don't have an f2 lens and you have a 2.8, well, we could figure these settings out. So for example, right here, we're at 1/250th of a second, we're at f2, and we're at only 800 ISO. So we're not pushing it too far. But if you had just a 2.8 lens, right? That's why am I putting I don't know why I'm putting a dot there. I put the dot there. So if we're at 1/250th of a second at 2.8 and the proper exposure was at f2, what would we do in this situation to compensate for that loss of light? Because going from f2, I'll turn here, and I know some of this is basic, but I haven't done a lot of these educational, informative things in a long time, and I love building exposure. So f2 is letting more light in. 2.8 is starting to let less light in. It's one stop different. So we look at our settings, where can we get one stop more of light or exposure? Well, we could drop the shutter speed to 1/125th of a second, which is half of 1/250th, and that would be f2.8, there I did it again, at 800 ISO. And we could get away with that because he's not moving, so 1/125th is perfectly fine. Another option is we could be at the 1/250th at f2, I did it again, 2.8, and instead of using 800, we go up one stop to 1600. So you see that you have the leeway to do this. This is how you build your exposure. You change one thing at a time. Don't try to change the shutter speed and the aperture and then take a picture. This goes back to my 3 shots or less that I've done in the past. You can get the proper exposure in 3 shots or less. You take it, you get it, you guess your settings to start based off of educated guess, and then you make one change. If it's too bright, what do I do? If it's too dark, what do I do? And these are basic settings. It doesn't matter if you have an R3, an RP, a Rebel S1, it doesn't really matter what you have. This is how you build the settings, and you could have gotten this in that situation with the same exact settings. Now, I love the quality that you get out of these f2 lenses. I'm a absolute big fan of that. Big fan. But I just like this photo because it shows Robert flipping through the book and you've got the manager here talking. So it's a good establishing one, so I'm gonna mark it as a 6. Because 6 means that I like it a lot. Do I like this one? It's all right. He's smirking. The manager said something. Do you see how I'm using, I got closer with the 28. I'm using these books as a frame. I'm using the table as a bottom part of my frame to draw me in to the center here. Now, I'm using the IAF. I cannot tell you how much I loved using the R3, and I sit here and I question, is the R3 better than the A1, better than the Z9? They're all really good cameras. They all get the job done. I love the AF in the R3. I could see possibly in the future with the glass that they offer, taking that out on shoots without a problem. I mean, of course I could take it out on shoots without a problem because as a photographer, you should be able to do that with anything, whether someone hands you a Pentax, a Fuji, a Nikon, a Canon, a Sony, a Minolta, an Olympus, it doesn't matter. As long as you understand the fundamentals. I just liked this. And look how the background gets obliterated. We're still at 1/250th of a second at f2 at 800 ISO. I guess I'm using this video to do a little bit of ranting on some things that I see when I do critiques or see people talk about I use auto ISO or not shooting in manual exposure. I'm not saying that it's wrong to do that. I'm saying that you have more control over your camera when you make those decisions and you understand it. And I get it in certain situations where auto ISO might be needed, where a subject is going from the shadow part of a football field to the bright part, and you can't change the settings quick enough, and that's where you utilize the tech of the camera. But in a situation like this, the light isn't changing. And that's what you need to remember, is that in a situation where the light isn't changing, why should we allow the camera and the auto ISO to just bounce around over and over? Whereas if it's taking a reading off of his jacket, it's gonna be like, oh shit, this is dark. We need to raise that ISO, which is then going to counter it's gonna raise your ISO. I don't wanna do that, right? In a situation like this, little tweaks. It's just exposure at that point. One turn of a dial bumps the aperture, aperture up or down, open or close, let more light in, block more light. Generally, the last thing that I'm gonna change is the aperture. If I'm shooting at 2, it's for a reason. If I'm shooting at 2.8, it's for a reason. And so I leave that there. I ride the shutter speed because it's easy to ride the shutter speed, but you wanna make sure that you have enough speed there that if you do have to lower it because a cloud comes by, that your subjects aren't gonna blur if they're moving fast. I know, I'm just giving you as much as I can right now because that's really what I wanna deliver is a lot of value. I like the tones, I like what I got. Maybe this isn't one of my favorite shots, but from composition speaking, I like the evenness left to right where the book, I left the same amount on the left as I did on the right. He's composed well, he's signing a book. Yeah, I mean, similar, we went with the color. And I like this more because I like the way that he's signing. We don't have the smirk on the face, right? I like the smirk, but and then he's looking, and then I get this one when he looks down. So as part of the photo story, I have a wide to establish the scene. I would like to go wider, but not everybody always has the chance to go wider because you may not have a wider lens. I have a little tighter here, and then later on, I'm like, oh, he's signing. I'm gonna wanna get his autograph, get him signing the book. And that's another challenge that is always there. You always need to be thinking, what are the different angles can I get? Step back, get close, move to the right, move to the left, see who the other people in the story are, and try to capture them. So far we've picked these two, and now I go over his shoulder. Is this one good? So what was happening is he was closing the book really fast as soon as he got to the Costa part. So I had to do this a couple of times. So what are my settings? I'm now at 1/500th of a second at f2. So what did I change? What happened? And let me see, where's my exposure? My exposure is spot on, actually. So what changed in the two is that the white paper is much brighter. So I went ahead and I raised my exposure to 1/500th of a second. And you can see that I didn't even have to change very much in this image because it's right on. So I'm not sure that I'm gonna keep this. I may come back to it, but I love this shot. So now we went vertical. Now I went to 1/320th of a second. As you see, but the difference between 1/250th and 1/320th and 1/500 is basically a stop. And when you're shooting raw, you don't have to worry about making those changes. You don't have to worry about bringing it back too far. You're gonna have enough leeway for 2 stops. You don't wanna be off by a lot, but you also wanna focus on getting the image and being darn close. That's me. It's gonna be darn close. I'd rather have you get the picture and be off by 2 stops than just get the be fiddling getting the exposure and then miss the image. That's one of the arguments that people have. I know Ken Rockwell used to make it. I don't like fidgeting with buttons. That's why I use auto modes. Like, yeah, in some situations, but I'm talking about when you're close. Between 250th and 500th is 1 stop. I don't care if you miss that by a smidge and you're off by a little. Favorite shot. One of my favorite shots from this. Look at the composition. Didn't cut the wheel off at the bottom. Didn't cut off the table on the left-hand side. You've got Robert signing the book. We've got a stack of books. He looks good here. We are at f2. Again, if you're at 2.8, I'm just gonna use this again. We're at 1/320th of a second. I'm not gonna screw it up. f2.0 and ISO 800. Not very far here. You wanna go to 2.8? 1 stop. Let's go to f4 if you just have an f4 lens when you're wide. That's 1 stop, that's 2 stops. What do we do here now that we're cutting down on the amount of light letting in because it's gonna be darker? We cut that down. We could take this, we've got 1/320th, we would put that in half, is 1/160th. We have that again, we're at 1/80th. We're getting into slow territory here, but for hand holding and having IBIS, you'd be fine, but you may get some motion blur as he's signing. So that's how you're setting, this is how we figure it out. Which way do we go here? Do we go up or down if we're gonna leave the same settings? So let's do it. 1/320, f2.8, 1/320, f4. Oh, I did it again. So 1 stop change is 1600 and then 3200. And all cameras today that are modern can handle 3200 ISO. But as you go up with ISO, you start to lose color. Any color that you had, you start to lose it. You get better color at lower ISOs. So keep that in mind. You also introduce more noise and more grain. But I'm okay with noise and grain. I do not recommend using any noise reduction software that you buy to get rid of it. I'm all for just some noise and some grain. And when your exposure is close, when you're at higher ISOs, you're gonna be better. But if you're off at higher ISOs by a couple of stops, you're gonna introduce more noise and grain into the frame, into your image. So remember that. But I just wanted to show you that I don't care if you have just an f4 lens, you could be in the same situation and you could be at you could be at 3200 ISO at f4 at 1/320. But look, if we go to 1/160th at f4, we're back down to 1600. And we're counterbalancing that, and we can do that. Or you can go down even further, and you're at 1/100th at f4 at 800 ISO. It's not that complicated, and I hope that this helps you understand. Okay, let's move through. So I love this image. I got a little closer. So he's signing. Is this any better than the black and white that we already have? No, I just went with a lower angle. I don't know that it's any better or better or worse, but that's not gonna be a keeper in telling the whole photo story. Now I switched angles. I have the cart right here. I don't find this to be a distraction. I find it to help create some dimension. I got up at a slightly higher angle. So the background, nice and out of focus, separated from Bob. I got his hair up in here. I think that looks really good. Doesn't bother me that a little bit is close to the edge. I like this composition. I tell people all the time that I like when I do verticals, like portraits or anything like that, I like having the subject above this line or in line with their eyes. Like, I want their eyes here or I want their head above it if I'm gonna shoot this wide. What am I at, 28? No, I'm at 85. Oh, I put on the 85 one too. What a lens. And I got him signing again. So as part of the story, we've got a wide, we've got a medium, we've got a tight. Jared, that's a wide. Jared, that's a wide. And then, so we've got something that's a medium here. And now we're getting into signing. So this just becomes, do I like him crossing the T? Do I like the T being seen and you see the whole Costa? So we've got these three, and this is how you just decide what you're gonna put out. So I don't like the angle there. I mean, I do like the angle there, but I don't need all of this, the Sharpie box. I don't need that. We can still see that it says peril. I like the one where he's crossing the T. That's feeling better to me. So this one's feeling better to me. And I'm at 1/640th at 1.2, because now I went to 1.2, I dropped my ISO, and I dropped and I raised my shutter speed because now I'm shooting at 1.2. So I don't need to go too far into that. Now, as part of the story, there's this J.D. Mullane. He was a writer. Being that Robert was going to be speaking, this is the moderator of it, and I was getting him shaking hands. Ooh. Oh, does that say 10,000 or 1,000? 1, 2, 3. I have trouble seeing zeros. First thing I notice here, my camera bag with lenses on the floor. My camera bag has made many of appearances in videos in the past, and I'm sure, or in pictures in the past, and I'm sure it still will. But you may want to make sure that your bag isn't in a place where it's going to be a distraction. Am I upset that I cut off his foot? A little bit. I could have stepped back, but it happened quick. He turned, the autofocus goes right to this guy's eye. We're at f2, and I get the handshake. Does it matter that I cut his foot off? No, because really the focus goes to this guy and Robert shaking hands with the introduction. If I had wider, if I had the 24 to 72.8, then maybe I would have gotten his whole foot in there. Not a deal breaker, but it's one of those things to keep in mind, that it's not a distraction from a frame. I do talk about not cutting feet off in certain situations. With the main subject, in this case, that's my main subject, and cutting the other guy's foot off, I'm totally fine with. You gotta move, right? You gotta react quick, and that's where the autofocus is helping these days. In the olden days with DSLRs, I would have moved my focusing point quickly. I would have inched it over as I turned to try and get that guy, but you started to miss moments. And yes, I'm a big evangelist now for IAF. I've been for a long time, and I think it's important that as we grow with technology, you adapt to that. That's not saying there's anything wrong with DSLRs. The DSLRs should still be here for years to come because they're great values and great learning tools. And I'd rather have someone learn on a DSLR than start with the best mirrorless and not know what they're doing. I want to see them start to get competent with a DSLR, with their focus and their exposure and everything, so that when they do graduate to a mirrorless camera, they're going to feel much better and they're going to get better results because they already know what it was like to not have all of those bells and whistles. Okay, so let's keep moving on. This is a keeper because they're speaking. Robert waiting behind the scene, good. Do we spy my Bernie book? We do spy my Bernie book because I gave him one as a gift. Now, Bob, I call him Bob. He goes by Robert Costa because he can't go by Bob Costa because there's another guy named Bob Costa. Now, Robert just signed on with CBS, I believe, as like a head correspondent for reporting on, and I don't know that I'm getting it right, for reporting on politics. So he does not take a side. He is there to report the facts on both sides. He's going to call out Republicans, he's going to call out Democrats, he's going to call out independents. He's going to ask the questions and wait for the answers. So please understand that he wrote a book with Bob Woodward called Peril, which is just doing research on what happened in situations, and it doesn't go into his personal beliefs because he separates whatever his beliefs are, which he does not share publicly, and then reports facts. That's what he does. Whether you like that or you don't like it, I mean, if you don't like it, you're probably not watching my channel anyway, but I love this. I just like the feel of it. I like the natural vignette that is captured here. Do I want wider? Do I want tighter? So what's that at? That's at 39, that's at 28. Oh, I kind of like it because my Bernie book's in it, so that's one. I will go with that one over this one. This is still a good shot. He's getting news, he's reading news, he's seeing what's up. As part of a story, fine. We're gonna go with this because it's telling a little story. They're waiting behind the scenes. This is before they go down. They go downstairs to speak. Again, love the IAF. Now I bumped to 2000 ISO because it's not as bright up here where he's standing. There's not a lot of light. When he was sitting at this table, I got a lot of reflection. I get some light that bounces off of the table. Now, I'm very cognizant here, aware of, for those who don't know what that is, that I'm not gonna cut off the bottom of the table here because I like using this stuff as a natural frame. So I'm gonna keep that. Now we've got these two with him listening intently. So what I do here is I'm using the subject, Robert's the main focus. We've got the guy right here out of focus, but I'm using him out of focus to draw me in. That's why I'm shooting over his shoulder to give me the shot that I want. Now, do I like this? Or do I like this slight, contemplative, interesting conversation, interesting topic, right? I like this composition better where he is, but I like this shot better. I like the way that Robert's looking here. There's good eye contact going on. We're at 1/500th of a second at f2 at 2000 ISO, and my exposure is pretty darn close. I only brought it down just a little bit. I'll show you where it started. Will I show you where it started? That's where it started. So yeah, you could have the color, but the color, I like the black and white. It's very newsworthy to me, and that's why I went with that one. Now let me take a quick second to say that this is how I edited this file. It's my edit in Lightroom in black and white, but we do offer presets, and I want to show you how it can give you a great starting point. Let's take a look at Prestige Worldwide on this. With one click, that's what it's going to look like. We've got November Rain with no vignette. See, I like it without the vignette. You could go either way you want to go there. Mount Airy gives it a really nice look. We've got King Contrast, no grain, because I don't want to add extra grain to images. Then we've got Capone, which is actually pretty cool. And then we're going to go up to Fropack 1, where we're going to go with Kensington, no grain. You also have Kensington with grain. You can make a decision which way you want to go, and maybe for politics, Kensington with grain might be a good starting point for you. So look, if you're looking to give yourself a great starting point or speed up your raw workflow, we created 15 custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/fropack3. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick them up right now, they are still on sale. Or if you want to save even more and get the Kensington preset in Fropack 1, you can get the triple play bundle, which includes Fropack 1, 2, and 3, and save a lot more. Now, let's get back into the editing right here. That's what I like to go with. Okay. Now they go downstairs to have a conversation. They're literally doing it in the kids section at Barnes & Noble and Barnes & Noble Jr. They made this background events thing that says Robert Costa. The book is called Peril, and then you've got a picture of him right there, and I mean, it's in the kids section. So this is not really establishing the scene, but what I thought was interesting is, and I didn't know this at the time, that he's pointing to the lady in the front, which I believe was one of his elementary school teachers who saw that he was going to be here and came out to take a picture. She's taking a picture of him in the front row, so he recognized her, and that was fantastic. So let's keep going. That's a good one just from a storytelling standpoint. Now I switched to the 70 to 200, trying to find a different angle, and all I can tell you is the quality that you get from the f2s and the 1.2 lenses are far superior to 2.8s. But 2.8s aren't bad at all, and that's what most people end up getting. So my goal here was trying to get Bob in here and JD in here. Is this a great photo? The answer is no. It's not really establishing the scene very well, but it's something I was looking for an image. Not every image you get is going to be a winner in the photo story, but you still need to take them, and then you need to edit down to the best of the best with honor. Sir, that's up to you to do. You need to remember, and I say this a lot, you are the last line of defense between putting out garbage photos and the winning photos. You're in control, because you're in control of what you put out into the world. So you remember that. Not a good image. This is a little better for establishing, because now we can see, it's still not great, but Barnes & Noble Kids section, Junior, I'm sure people will have a field day with that from a political standpoint, but it is what it is. We've got the people in the crowd here. Maybe it's a little orange. So I could pull out some orange, but I don't want to lose too much of the color from Bob's face. This is a little better. It's establishing a scene. We see all the rows and rows of people that came to here to speak, to listen to Bob. Where's my exposure? My exposure, pretty darn close. 1/500th at f2.8. Nothing extravagant, but you can see, let's do this. 1/500, 2.8, 2.8 at 3200 ISO. Now, if I was using the f2 lens, right, that's one stop of more light we're letting in. So if I was using that and I was shooting at 70, because the 28 to 70 goes to 70, I can go to f2, which is one stop. What would happen here? How do we compensate for that? We would change one thing, right? We changed to f2. So we don't want to try and change the shutter speed and the ISO at the same time. 1/500th is fast enough for what Robert's doing here, so we can leave it at 1/500th of a second, cut this in half to 1600 ISO. Or we can go backwards. Where's my backwards? We could be like, all right, well, let's go up faster because I'm using it, my subject is moving quick. So that's terrible, but that says 1/1000th at f2 at 3200. If I was choosing what I would do here, I would probably be at 1/500 at f2.0 at 1600 ISO. We could take that even further. We can go to 800 ISO. This would stay the same. One stop less of light would be 1/250th. You want to go even further? Let's go to 1/125th at f2. Now it's another stop. We're down to 400. You want to go further? We got 200 at f2, and 1/125th you cut in half to one math. Well, it's going to be about 1/60th because there's no 1/70th or what? No, there's no 1/55th of a second. So that would double to 125. So that's it. That's how you build exposure. That is a crash course in exposure right there. So understand that. All right, what do we have next? Okay, now I'm trying to be creative because he's just going to be talking for an hour. What do? I don't like this picture at all. This is not very good. I don't like the 187. 187 millimeters. So what I was going for is I wanted this in focus and then Bob out of focus in the background. What's the next one look like? That one I prefer more. I don't like that there's a Fuji water bottle here, but that's what they put there to hold up the book. So I will go with this one because I like that the book's in focus and that he's out of focus, but that's him. And we're at 2.8. Another thing you could do is if you want him more in focus, you could go to f4. All right, let's play the game. Let's go to another page here. Let's play the game. We're at 1/5. I know this is education, man. We're at 1/500th of a second. 2.8, same thing as before. 2.8 at 3200 ISO. Let's say we want Bob in more focus. We want less depth of field. We don't want him to be that blurry in the background. What do? Exposure-wise, we want to go to f4. Right? Generally, I probably wouldn't go to f4 too much, but what's f4 doing? It's cutting back on the amount of light that's being let in. It's one stop, and it's also going to give us a little bit more depth here. So, f4, we got one stop. We lost light, so we need to gain more. We can make the ISO more sensitive, double that to 6400. All right, cross that out. We lost light, we can go down to 1/250th. So what I would have done right off the bat is 1/250th for one stop to compensate, and 3200 would be exactly the same setting that I had up here. That'd be the exact same picture except for the fact we went to f4. So that's what changed, that's what's different. We want to go even further. We got 1/125th at f4. We changed one stop here, so then we go to 1600. I know it might seem complicated when you're starting out, but this is the fundamentals and basics of the math. You're better off making the decision than letting the camera in this situation make the change for you in terms of auto ISO or aperture priority. It's going to be thrown off. The meter is going to be flicking and flacking and changing all over the place because it's going to read for the book that's dark. It's going to read for the paper. Then it's going to read the background. It's going to be, oh, it's too bright. I need to do this. If the light is not changing, your exposure is not going to change very far. That was one of the biggest revelations in my education of photography when Rusty Kennedy, when I was like 19 or 20 years old or a little older than that, was like, Jared, the light isn't changing. Why are you in aperture priority? And it clicked. All right, let's keep moving through. Now we're establishing a scene. This was, you can see the age demographic here is like average 72. But this is as wide as I could go with the 28 millimeter. Oh, and I went to 4.5. Look what I did there. So I went to 4.5 because I didn't want to shoot at f2 because I wanted people to be in focus and not all the way in focus in the back. I don't need them in focus, but the first couple rows, right? Because I didn't want it to just be like, oh, I'm focused here on JD and then these guys are out of focus. I needed it to be more in focus. It's establishing a scene. Generally speaking, I would have a 16, you could have a 16 to 35, a 15 to 35. I prefer the 12 to 24 from Sony or a 14 to 24 from Nikon, or even that 14 to 30 from Nikon is great at f4. But this, you can see my exposure is spot on, which is really good. I'm at 1/200th at 4.5 at 3200 ISO. That's perfectly fine in this situation. So that establishes the scene. Now we've got JD's giving a speech or asking a question, and then we've got Robert in the background. So it's good to get the moderator and it's good to get the speaker. So moving on. Now he's signing books. I like this. Let's see. The light's not going to change, so we're 1/640th at f2 at 2000 ISO. Yeah, I mean, I like the interaction. I want to see interactions, right? Good eye contact. I'm focused on her. She has the book. He just signed it or is going to sign it. And he's talking, hands nicely in the pocket. Good composition. Background's not distracting. These people would be extremely distracting if it wasn't at 2 or 2.8. If we're at 4, if we're at 4.5, if we're higher, this is why I stress glass. And even if you get inexpensive Sigma or Tamron glass, there's a 28 to 70, 28 to 75 for Sony's that you can get. You've got so many different lenses you can adapt from Canon. Nikon has a bunch of different options. I'd rather see you get a prime lens that's a 1.8 or a 1.4 and use that than shoot at higher apertures because you have a kit lens that's 18 to 55. Just understand, growing with your glass is more important than the body. So I like this one. They're hugging, they're having it. Like, I think it's great that they're hugging. That's probably good for him. I mean, it's a little awkward. It's an awkward hug right here, just to point it out. It's probably a little too yellow now that I look at it, so I could pull it down, but that's the crappy lighting that's in there. I don't want to take it too far. But that's good for Bob. I would give him this photo, but I don't think it's part of the photo story. Well, I like this better. She's looking at the book that he signed. He's smiling. The husband's smiling as well. People in the background are enjoying it because you can totally see it behind their masks. Then we've got him signing the book for her. So this is twofold. We've got him signing, which I like, and I'm at f2, 50 millimeter. Man, I love that lens. And he's in focus. I love this composition, right? I've got his eye in focus. Probably. I mean, it's probably the eyebrow. It's pretty darn close. You couldn't tell the difference. You've got the eye in focus. You've got the important lady in the background in focus. You've got him signing the book. I could probably pull back the highlights more to get the book to come back, but I don't want to go too far. I could probably go a little bit more just to bring it back just a little bit. This is where it started. That's where it finished. So that's why you have the raw file. I like that. I don't know that this is needed in there because we have her here in this photo. So that's not going to be one that I will pick. I know I'm moving through a little quicker. So I like his look here. This is very like questioning look. I like that these books are out of focus. Is it the best image? No, but I like that he's behind the table and I wanted a straight on shot there. So I'll add that to the story. This was, I believe, one of the old principals or the head of the school district. Yeah, the president of the school district who came out to speak. I like that he's signing it, but I like more that there's a handshake. The handshake means more to me than the signing, so that's why I'm going with that. I like this composition better. This composition seems to be slightly off, but I don't care about cutting his head off here because you know who it is, but the focus is still Robert, and then the shaking of the hand, like that. Signing from the side. You see how I've gone to all different angles? I was on this side of the table, I went in front of the table, and then I moved to this side. So do we like the wider or do we like the tighter? 1/500th at f2. So we're at 28 and verse 47. Do I like that we see the line? Do I like that we see the table? Is this stuff distracting? I kind of like it because it's behind the scenes more. I like the other book and stuff that you can see. I'm gonna go with my gut on this one as the first one. You may disagree, which is fine, but that's what I like better in the story. So that photo here, we only have a couple more. Well, I like this. I couldn't get it centered better. If I could make anything better, I could get it centered more, but I think there were people in the way, so I couldn't. I like this interaction. I like this. I want it to be more centered. That's that. And then we've got this is a shot that they asked for the Barnes & Noble. So that's what they asked for. We'll call that part of the photo story. We'll keep it. We went down from 283 to 36 down to 23 images, and then we'll call these the best of the best to tell the story. And I might go through and I might get rid of more in this situation. But we establish a scene, we see where he's at. If I had the wider than this, I probably would have taken another wider. I would have switched lenses, but I didn't bring it. Love it. I still love this as my favorite shot. This still works. If I needed to get rid of an image, I could get rid of this, but I actually like it. I like that the books are out of focus there. I love that I got him signing, so it's the wides, the mediums, the tights, the details. We've got interaction. It's good in the photo story on its own, maybe not as much. Love this one. I like the wide aspect of it. Plus it has my Bernie book in it. I could get rid of this one. This one's maybe not necessary in the story, but when you look at the next image, you're like, okay, so they're talking, and then I moved over his shoulder to get the shot. That's what you do, you move around. I love this with the interaction in the front. This is terrible. Goodbye. It's terrible because it doesn't establish the scene. This establishes the scene better. I don't need to see all those heads. This is better storytelling than that other image. This is fine. I could probably do without this, but it's fine. That's gonna live there for now. This, if it was just about Robert, maybe I don't put this in there. Then we've got the last to finish out. I like this conversation. I love this interaction right here. We could probably do away with this image, but I got it centered and I like that. Shaking hands, signing books, taking pictures. Please get it centered next time, and taking the group. So it's probably a handful I could get rid of, but that's 22 out of it, and I think that tells a pretty good story of the event. I love the candid behind the scene images. Those are my favorite in the entire thing. But you see how I built the story. Wides, mediums, tights, details. Are there a ton of details in this one? Not as much, because there's not as many details to really have, but I got him signing the book. I got the wide to establish the scene of him upstairs signing the books, interacting with the moderator, and then downstairs, I got one establishing shot of all the rows of people. That was better than the one from behind. That shot was terrible. It's not a good shot. It just looks amateurish. But from the other angle, I like that shot better. If there's something to take out of this, there's a lot to take out of this with the exposure, not having to worry about changing it too far because the lighting isn't changing, is to move around. Switch lenses, move around. I ran through all three. I had the 28 to 75, 28 to 70 f2, 85 1.2, which I didn't use a ton, and the 70 to 200. That's a pretty good setup. I would prefer having one wider, like I said earlier. That's one lens I just didn't take, but the 15 to 35 2.8 would have been the one that I would have taken if I needed to go wider, and that would have helped me establish the scene a little more and given me more angles to choose from if I went with that lens. So this is what I like doing. I haven't done a lot of these, but this is what I like doing. And the next video guide that I release is gonna do more of this, breaking this stuff down. Please, if you got this far and you would be interested in me breaking down more photo shoots like this, how I cull down the images, let me know down below that is something you would love to learn from, because I'm gonna do it anyway, because I think that I know that it's gonna be very helpful for people. So let me know though down below, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna do real world photo shoots. I'm gonna break the whole process down and then go through a bunch of old shoots and show you what I like, what I don't like. This is what's going through my mind when I'm going through my images. It takes time. So I appreciate it, guys. You wanna pick up those presets. It helps me continue to make these videos. It's just very helpful to support the channel. Thank you very much. There's that. I'm gonna end it right there. That's a timer, so this camera doesn't go too long. Thank you very much for watching. Jared, PolinPhotoPhoto.com. See ya.